West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy with Chef Justice Putnam. Netrootsradio.com.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théâtres, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma fleur sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est long, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte.
President Biden heads to the State Department and lays out his vision for U.S. foreign policy. The U.S. Senate voted on amendments through the night, bringing Democrats one step closer to passing President Biden's COVID relief package. And in the latest Associated Press poll, Joe Biden's job approval rating is at 61%. That's quite high.
Willie, I'm not really good at this politics thing. I haven't been following it much. Is that usually where presidents are?
No, not right out of the gate like that. It's 61% in a divided nation. So he's putting his head down and trying to avoid the fight that's happening over impeachment in the United States Senate, and to show that he's getting things done. And that continued overnight, as Mika said, with another step toward the passage of this massive COVID relief bill that the American people are waiting for.
Yeah, and the thing is, again, David Drucker, even among conservatives that I know who voted for Donald Trump, and when I was talking to so many of my friends and family members, I'm like, you're voting for him, why? They always started by saying, he exhausts me. I'm just so exhausted. I wish he'd shut up. I wish he'd go away. I wish he'd just sign bills. There was such an exhaustion. I wonder when we see anywhere from 49 to 61% approval rating with Joe Biden, if it's not even some moderates out there, maybe some moderate Republicans that didn't vote for Joe Biden, who's just like, God, you know what? It's really good to be able to have dinner with the family and not be talking about the latest crazed, dangerous thing coming out of Washington, D.C.
Right, and I think that was one of the things that hurt President Trump in the campaign, especially with the coronavirus, is that voters, at least voters in the right places that mattered in the presidential election, wanted to see some competent management, and they wanted to have this idea that somebody at the top was leading and taking care of everything. And for a lot of voters, they couldn't get that sense from President Trump because he was constantly blaming governors, blaming mayors for problems happening with the virus and the pandemic. And he wasn't telling everybody, I'm taking care of it. Here's step 1, step 2, step 3. And the interesting thing about voters, sometimes they will overlook, and we've seen this with a lot of approval ratings with governors, at least over the first 6 to 7 to 8 months of the pandemic. Even if things aren't going well and the things that they're doing, that a politician is doing, is not working, if they get the sense that you're being upfront with them about the problem, that you're trying to fix it and you're taking steps and that you're in charge, they're going to give you a lot of leeway, and they're actually going to feel good about the job you're doing. Over time, they will start to look at the results, and over time, they will start to look at the agenda a little bit deeper. And over time, voters might get upset, and you might see approval ratings change. We've seen that with certain governors. In California, right. Governor Newsom is one example of that. But right out of the gate, Joe Biden is producing a different style of management than his predecessor. And people feel like he is taking steps to fix the problem. And if they can feel like there is progress, then this sort of reaction from voters will continue. If they begin to feel like he's not getting the job done, then we'll start to see some angst from voters, and he'll have to deal with that.
Yeah. Well, I think as far as Gavin Newsom goes, Gene Robinson, a lot of that has to do with the timing of his dining choices. But also, one thing that you see that has surprised me, I always thought we needed to stay in Paris. As a conservative, I thought we needed to stay in the Paris Accords. It's very interesting looking at some of these presidential orders that he signed. I was thinking, okay, well, that's going to be 50-50. I mean, that's going to divide the country. A lot of these things that he signed already are like 70-30 issues, 80-20 issues. They're sexual orientation, discrimination, whatever that part of his agenda that he signed. I was like, okay, that's a 50-50. Because we heard an awful lot from the right on that. I think that clocked in at 75-25, 80-20. People are like libertarians on that, saying, come on. Yeah. So a lot of these things that we've heard are going to be so divisive through the years are actually 70-30 issues.
Yeah, they are. And, I think the other thing people are reacting to, Joe, is what actual government looks like. what it's not a bunch of crazy tweets. It's actual serious actions, whether executive orders, proposed legislation, things moving pretty much through some sort of regular order. There are updates by the scientists and the doctors on coronavirus. President Biden comes out and explains his policies and what he's trying to accomplish, and how he's trying to help people, how he's trying to help communities and families across the nation. And of course, yes, it's one thing to explain how you're trying to do it. It's another thing to actually deliver. But just the sort of normalness and peacefulness and sort of non-craziness of this administration, I think, is reflected in that 61% figure. It's like people are starting to remember, oh yeah, this is what it's supposed to be like. It's not supposed to be the way it was the last 4 years.
It is Friday, the 5th of February of 2021, and you are in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. I am your chef de cuisine, Justice Putnam. Gunner, the English Bulldog, is our snoozing sous chef, and our daily special is Blue Moon Spirits Fridays, because we are all night hawks in the Diner of Life. Well, the French 77s are all virtually mixed and poured for your virtual imbibing pleasure. So do so. Hey, how are you? We made it to the weekend, and it's so lovely getting back to the way weekends used to be before the last 4 years transpired. Wow, and that was almost immediate. How the weekends changed immediately. Wow. Well, it's good to have him back again. And it's Super Bowl weekend, too. So, all sorts of bad things happened during Super Bowl weekend. I know, like guacamole, food poisoning. Yeah, what's up with that? Come on. It's fake guacamole. Use the real stuff. All right? And then when he adds some lemon to it, it adds a little bit of a acid pH, and it's good. You're not gonna, get sick. So stop with the other stuff, please. Ugh, that other stuff, I don't know what it is, but it ain't good. So don't get it. Okay, well, Super Bowl weekend, something to look forward to, I guess. There is still a pandemic going on, if people forgot. Some people don't even care. I love that Sherrod Brown, I'm kind of bouncing around here, but I'm just going to mention this because we still have a little thread here holding the theme together. I was going to mention that I loved how Sherrod Brown called out Rand Paul for not wearing a mask. God, Rand Paul. And he's supposed to be a doctor. Supposed to be. Okay, well, when you set up your own licensing board, you can license yourself, and that supposedly makes it so you're not a quack. Come on. I'm not letting that guy look at my eyes 1 second. I'll go to someone reputable, someone who wears a mask. Okay, so good on Sherrod. Right there. Put it right there in the congressional record for history to note. Yep, we're in a pandemic. Super Bowl weekend. It looks like some of the Kansas City Chiefs have some COVID problems. Well, I wonder why. Yep. Well, that could be part of the game, like the weather. If you don't put in long enough cleats in the mud, sometimes you slip all over the place. Though if you put in too long in cleats, you might, bust a knee, and no one likes that. I know, I've done it a few times. Not fun. So, what else is going on? Oh! We don't have Marjorie Taylor Greene to kick around in the Education Committee now, do we? And what was the other one? I guess finance or something? What's up with that? Kevin McCarthy was unable to rein her in, so the adults had to. And, of course, this little juvenile delinquent is spouting off today about, there was a joke going around like, don't Democrats know that if you take her off the committee, it's going to give her a bunch of free time? Well, she's taken that. It says, I can't believe these Democrats are going to give me free time. All right. I'll just let you know, there's still in the works a strategy to kick you out, lady. And you should never have been able to run in the first place. But, hey, apparently this is America. Apparently. All I know is that anybody from a liberal side that tried to get away with what you were getting away with would not get away with it. On many levels. I mean, first of all, Democrats apparently have a vetting process. The Republicans don't care. As long as it destroys government and democracy, as long as it shows that government doesn't work, and we're the example of it. If we can't make government work, you're not going to make us make government work. Yeah, that was their whole argument. Oh, Obama promised that he would bring us together, and we're going to make sure he doesn't. Okay. Well, then that must be Obama not fulfilling a promise now, is it? Because of the recalcitrance of insurgents. Yes, this insurgency has been long-running, long before Trump took over. Okay, we can split some hairs and say that, the works were in the works, and then Trump came around, and then we got an insurgency. So we got our work cut out for us. Apparently 71 million people are perfectly fine with killing Democratic leaders. That's our gal. Yeah. Okay. All I know is that Squeaky Burbert and the Greenhouse Effect is not the death metal band any of us need right now. Okay? And I don't want any saccharine BS like it's a beautiful day either. Oh, God. Boy, talk about triggering. Every time I hear anything from It's a Beautiful Day, particularly the song It's a Beautiful Day, no wonder there's violence in America. No wonder. Good thing I'm able to keep a cap on it, and that might just come from, keeping your testosterone under check. Because that brings to the fore another observation. They always say follow the money. I would also say follow the human growth hormone purchases. And with it, the steroid purchases too. I know maybe the steroids are a little bit harder because they are underground mostly. But follow those, and I'm sure we will find a lot of white nationalists, cop-hating cops. Yeah, the Proud Boys were going after cops. Anyway, they're a little too beefy, a little too puffy up there in the face, okay? Yeah, they're on drugs. Take them off that stuff. And I think that, the aggressive nature in our society would diminish dramatically. I really do. because at some point people need to learn how to take a deep breath. 8 counts in, 8 counts out. That's very hard. You got to work up to it. It might take a lifetime, but when you finally do, you might achieve some sort of balance, or at least a calming effect, especially when coupled with envisioning a flower opening and then closing, blooming and then closing, blooming and closing at 8 counts in, 8 counts out. Yeah, you don't really want to go and bash some cop's head in with the American flag, will you? You would hope. So, yeah, I think that the human growth hormone aspect needs to be followed. And I think purchases of those should be, shall we say, restricted? If not to the general population, then to some identifiable few who would use them for, well, nefarious reasons. I know cop departments everywhere, they like their guys all puffed up. But, you know, we need to get steroids and human growth hormone out of our cop ranks as well. Please. We don't need any Terminators or RoboCops all pumped up on human growth hormone. Yeah, we don't need that kind of aggression. Whenever I see these cops going off, that's the first thing I would do is make them pee in a jar. But who knows? Maybe they're required to be that way, or at least encouraged. We need to stop that encouragement. And that's only just part of it. Yeah, the military on Berbert, Squeaky Berbert, and Marjorie Taylor Greene were totally up in arms that our new defense chief has just said, you know, we're going to have a stand down. And each branch of the military is going to have to deal with the white nationalist extremism in their ranks. And already the right wing, Tucker Carlson, all of them are up in arms because, you know, the guy is a black guy. Okay? That makes it even worse in their eyes. They're up in arms. You know, you're going to have a litmus test. It's not fair to our troops. Well, yeah, it is, lady. I mean, yeah, it's exactly what we want is a litmus test. Are you a white nationalist? You can't be in the U.S. military then. It's simple. All right? There's all sorts of reasons why you can't be in the military, and, you know, there's mental incapacity is one of them. And whatever incapacitates your mental state is not an excuse to be able to get into the military. Oh, well, I was, you know, somebody allowed me to think that way. Allowed you? Oh, boy. Boy, that apology. It all comes back in a circle somehow in this story arc. Yes, Marjorie Taylor Greene was not able to take any responsibility for her actions. She was dealt with accordingly. And somehow, as you know, this passive aggressiveness that comes from the right is just it's unseemly. It really is. But yeah, she was going on and on and on about, you know, I couldn't trust CNN. I couldn't even trust Fox. So I went on Facebook. Oh, that's where you'll find the truth. And somehow I came across Q and I was allowed to believe these things. Who allowed you? Please. Who allowed you? I think actually it was some sort of diminished capacity attempt at blaming Facebook. Okay. If it wasn't for Facebook, I would have never come across Q. Well, if it wasn't for a car, you probably would have never come across, I don't know, anything that ever happened out in the world. Please. We are all imbued with volition, the ability to make a choice for good or ill. I think she chose poorly. All right. What's on the rest of the menu here? Starting off in the Bistro Cafe part of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Blue Moon, Spirits, Fridays. At the top, you know, sometimes Joe and Mika just kind of crack me up. Earlier, you know, Joe went off on how he just discovered that evangelicals were so behind Donald Trump. Where is Joe been? Come on, Morning Joe, wake up. Anyway, in spite of a divided nation, as spelled out on Joe and Micah's show this morning, or Mika's, Joe Biden's approval rating stands unusually high at 61%. I love the fact that Trump barely made it into the 40s at any point during his administration. But that's because, at heart, America really despises mobsters. They really do. On the rest of the menu, the Biden administration will delay a last-minute Trump rule that would have drastically weakened the 1918 Migratory Bird Treaty Act. And we reported on that when he imposed that last-minute rule. And there were a lot of them. Lots of them. Monkey wrench and everything is what he was doing. A district judge ruled that Trump officials did not weigh the climate costs of a massive coal mine on the Montana-Wyoming border, which is a very seminal case here, because this goes into Joe Biden's environmental policy, and that is the actual cost to the environment from our actions, and that was not factored in at any time during the Trump administration, and in fact, they actively avoided such. And the Senate Foreign Relations Committee backed President Joe Biden's nomination of veteran diplomat Linda Thomas-Greenfield to be the U.S. ambassador to the United Nations. Now she has to be nominated, but we got Lindsey Graham there now. Oh, wow, good. After the break, we move to the chef's table where the UK expelled 3 Chinese spies posing as journalists in the past year. And Sergei Lavrov warned Antony Blinken he better respect the Russia legal system as if they ever respected ours. All that and more on West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit. At the bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com, to the right of the page, right there by the social media scroll, is the chat room link. And Kelly Lincoln monitors the chat room. Thank you, Kelly. To the left of the chat room link, near the bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com, is the link to our Patreon page. If you could afford an espresso-type coffee drink and send those funds to us once a month, we are able to stretch those dollars, and then we pay our bills. We get the needed machinery and software to continue this, resistance powerhouse, as we've been doing for almost 10 years. We're only weeks now from our 10-year anniversary from, the actual launch of Netroots Radio. We didn't become a 24/7, 365 radio station for another couple of months after that. But hey, we have been able to sustain ourselves because of your help and your generosity, and we thank you so much for allowing us to fulfill our civic duty as the founders originally intended so many years ago. If you would like to follow Netroots Radio on Twitter, go to @NetrootsRadio. Tom takes care of that. Thanks, Tom. Follow me on Twitter @Justice Putnam. I post the show notes and links diary on Daily Codes about 10 minutes before showtime, and then get that linked up on social media, and Twitter is part of that. So check it out. Follow the show on Twitter @CookbookWest, and pick up podcasts. Please pick up podcasts by way of Spreaker, Stitcher, TuneIn, iHeart, YouTube, iTunes, and really wherever podcasts can be found. This first offering here in the Bistro Cafe part of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, because we also have the chef's table, all right, just letting you know, comes out of the Associated Press by Matthew Brown. The Biden administration said it was delaying a rule finalized by former President Donald Trump. We can use the P word for him when it's former, okay, just so you know. And that was finalized in Trump's last days in office that would have drastically weakened the government's power to enforce a century-old law protecting most wild birds. The rule could mean more birds die, including those that land in oil pits or collide with power lines or other structures, government studies say. But under Trump, the Interior Department sided with industry groups that had long sought to end criminal prosecutions of accidental but preventable bird deaths. While the new rule had been set to take effect this coming Monday, Interior Department officials said they were putting it off at President Joe Biden's direction and will reopen the issue to public comment. The Migratory Bird Rule was among dozens of Trump-era environmental policies that Biden ordered to be reconsidered on his first day in office. Former federal officials, environmental groups, and Democrats in Congress contend many of the Trump rules were meant to benefit private industry at the expense of conservation. Not contending? Are you serious? We're contending? It is. Now, the Migratory Bird Treaty Act is a bedrock environmental law critical to protecting migratory birds and restoring declining bird populations, Interior spokesperson Melissa Schwartz said. The Trump administration sought to overturn decades of bipartisan and international precedent in order to protect corporate polluters. A federal judge in August had blocked a prior attempt by the Trump administration to change how the bird treaty was enforced, but the administration remained adamant that the law had been wielded inappropriately for decades to penalize companies and other entities that kill birds accidentally. But you know what? They don't care about their own workers. Why would they care about a bunch of birds? Brown of the Associated Press brings us this next offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. A judge says U.S. officials downplayed climate change impacts and other environmental costs from the expansion of a massive coal mine near the Montana-Wyoming border in a case that could test how far the Biden administration is willing to go to unwind its predecessor's decisions. The lawsuit over Montana's Spring Creek mine hinges in part on an issue central to President Joe Biden's climate change agenda, making decisions based on the full costs of fossil fuel extraction, including impacts on a warming planet that are being felt across society. U.S. District Judge Susan Waters said that under former President Donald Trump, the Interior Department played up the economic benefits of the expansion of Spring Creek, which opened up development to 85 million tons of coal. But Waters said in a ruling on Wednesday that officials failed to fully consider how burning the coal would contribute to climate change, known as the social cost of carbon, a concept that places a dollar value on every ton of greenhouse gases emitted. Trump in 2017 issued an order for agencies not to use social cost of carbon estimates that had been developed at the end of the Obama administration. Waters said the executive order did not excuse the government from considering those costs if they represent the best science. Federal agencies cannot ignore more accurate scientific information when it is available, Waters wrote. A federal magistrate judge issued similar recommendations in 2019, but the case had been put on hold after former owner Cloud Peak Energy went bankrupt. Spring Creek employs about 250 workers who mined more than 9 million tons of coal in 2020. The strip mine, Montana's largest, established in 1979, was bought by the Navajo Nation-owned Navajo Transitional Energy Company in 2019. Mining in the Spring Creek expansion had been going on since it was approved in 2012. Waters rejected a request from environmentalists to reverse that approval, which could have blocked mining altogether. She gave the government until October to do a new analysis of the mine's climate impacts and other environmental effects. Patricia Zengurli of Reuters brings us this final offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. The Senate Foreign Relations Committee backed President Joe Biden's nomination of veteran diplomat Linda Thomas-Greenfield to be the U.S. ambassador to the United Nations, steering her toward confirmation by the full Senate. The committee voted 18-4 in favor of the nominee. It was not clear when her confirmation would come up for a vote in the full Senate, which is currently debating COVID-19 relief legislation, and due to conduct former President Donald Trump's impeachment trial next week. The committee's vote was delayed by 1 day because of an objection by Senator Ted Cruz, a vocal Biden critic who said he was concerned about a 2019 speech Thomas-Greenfield gave at a Confucius Institute, a center funded by the Chinese government at a U.S. university. Really? Ted? The committee's Democratic and Republican leaders said Thomas-Greenfield's experience, the 68-year-old has spent decades as a diplomat, including as U.S. ambassador to Liberia, outweighed the impact of a single speech. I have no doubt that Ambassador Thomas-Greenfield is someone who is clear-eyed about the challenges we face from the Chinese government, said Democratic Senator Bob Menendez, who presided over the vote during his first meeting as the committee's chairman since the party took control of the Senate. And that's only because of obstruction by McConnell, because he's the Grim Reaper who presides over, well, he still is presiding over the chamber where democracy goes to die. Because he is the Grim Reaper. Pretty soon we're going to beat that mofo at chess. Yeah, look up the Seventh Seal. You'll know what I'm talking about. I am not willing to let one speech define a person's career, said Senator Jim Risch, the top committee Republican. Risch voted for the nomination. She's got an outstanding record. She's a good person, maybe too good a person, he said. Well, I presume now that Risch has gone public that he's accepted somebody that Joe Biden wants. He will be primaried by some Q candidate, and they'll be getting a bunch of money from the RNC. Okay, that takes us to our break. And when we get back from that break, we will go through weather from around the world, and we will finish up with the stories that we have curated for you today. You are listening to West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, and we will be right back.
You are listening to netrootsradio.com.
Please hang up and try again.
From a point at sea to the circles of your mind, a new force is at work for planetary transformation. New radio for a new Earth.
This is Take Two Movie Review. I'm Kim Lowe. This week, not your granddad's Western. Paul Greengrass's new film, News of the World, is a Western for those who don't usually flock to Westerns. While there are nail-biting action scenes, the movie is essentially an unhurried drama about two damaged people trying to put their lives back together. The film centers around two characters. The first is Tom Hanks's Captain Jefferson Kyle Kidd, a former Confederate officer and publisher turned storyteller who visits towns in Texas delivering the news to paying audiences. Like a radio presenter before radio, Kidd ends his shows on an optimistic note, usually about the persistence of the human spirit. It's needed as much of the population is illiterate and still recovering from the Civil War. Notable in a vaguely contemporary way are his audience's reactions to real news. It's during one such trip that Kidd encounters 10-year-old Johanna, a German immigrant adopted by the Kiowa people after her family perished in an incident between the natives and settlers. Johanna is then orphaned a second time after another incident eliminates her adopted native family. Most of the film's action occurs as Kidd transports the girl to an aunt and uncle at the direction of the occupying forces. Johanna, played with few words by award-winning German child actress Helena Zengel, steals every scene she's in. Barely remembering her German family and not being fully Kiowan, she's a mess of fear, hurt, and distrust. The pair's epic journey past obstacles, natural and human, is an analog for Johanna's journey to find her place. Hanks is a natural here as her guide and protector, as fast with a gun as he is wise in his judgment. The acting in News of the World combined with stunning set design and cinematography make for a genuinely rewarding experience. This has been Take Two Movie Review. I'm Kim Lowe. Catch up with us at TakeTwoMovieReview.com and feed us back on our channel on YouTube.
This is Scientific American's 60-Second Science. I'm Christopher Intagliata. How big is a helium atom? Or maybe the better question is, how small? After an intricate game of particle jockeying, physicists have now measured the radius of the helium nucleus, and they've done it 5 times more precisely than before. Why do that? Well, atomic physicist Julian Kraut with the Max Planck Institute says these sorts of measurements can help refine our most basic ideas about how atoms work, like the theory of quantum electrodynamics.
So in order to see where it might break down or where we could see a hint that there's something which we have missed so far, we have to do very precise measurements.
But making those measurements was quite an undertaking. First, Kraut and his colleagues had to create a special flavor of helium, subbing a particle called a muon for the element's usual 2 electrons. Kraut says just getting a hold of the muons was tricky enough.
We create high energetic protons from a proton accelerator, and we shoot these protons on a target made out of carbon. And in this collision process, we also create these pions, which then decay into muons.
The muons last for only 2 microseconds, so what happens next happens fast. They shoot the muons into a tube containing helium gas. After banging into enough helium there, a muon will slow down and lose energy, and eventually get trapped by a final helium atom. The muon kicks out both the atom's electrons, and what's left is the helium nucleus, which is 2 protons and 2 neutrons, and a muon. It's called a muonic helium ion. Next, they bathe those ions in laser light, hoping to bump the muons up to a higher energy but unstable state. Catherine Klaus, an atomic physicist and science writer, compares that process to cleaning up a messy desk.
So this would be like if the atom were my desk, it would be like I have food all over my desk because I, eat lunch at my desk.
That's a somewhat stable state because her desk often has leftovers on it, she says.
If I were to clean it, I would be putting it into an unstable state because I can't keep it clean for very long. So I'd be that's the equivalent of shining the laser light onto this atom, as I'm taking it from a food messy state and putting it into a clean state.
Just as Klaus's desk can't stay clean very long, the muon almost immediately drops down to a more stable, messy state again.
But it can't become food messy again because it doesn't have food that's on the desk, but it does have papers and books that are always on the desk. So those are going to spread out, and that's going to become now a paper messy desk.
So, the muon starts in a semi-stable place, the food messy desk. It moves up to an unstable state, the clean desk, and then cascades down to a different stable ground state, the paper messy desk. As the muon drops down to this different ground state, an X-ray is emitted, alerting Kraut's team that the transition has occurred. That, in turn, means that whatever frequency their laser light was at was exactly enough to kick the muon up from its initial energy level to the higher, unstable energy level.
This difference, this energy difference between these two energy levels, from this we can extract how big actually the size of the nucleus is.
Following all this, the laser energy used to move the muon up to that unstable state can be used to calculate the radius of the helium nucleus, which is 1.67824 femtometers, 1 femtometer being 1 quadrillionth of a meter. They report the results in the journal Nature. The finding lines up nicely with the measurement of the helium nucleus derived through other means, though it's 5 times more precise. And that agreement means that our best approximation of how the building blocks of the universe interact, the standard model, is probably safe for now.
So far, yes, but it only means that at the level of accuracy which we have right now, all is well. And that also means we have to kind of measure more precisely and continue our search.
If this study's any indication, getting even more precise measurements of helium will be a truly Herculean task. Thanks for listening. For Scientific American's 60-Second Science, I'm Christopher Intagliata.
This program is presented by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention.
The discovery of penicillin in 1928 by Alexander Fleming was one of the greatest scientific achievements of the 20th century. It's hard to imagine a world before the development of what many consider to be miracle drugs. However, just 90 years ago, antibiotics weren't available. Thanks to antibiotics, some common illnesses such as strep throat are now easily treated, whereas in the past they often led to serious complications. Antibiotics serve an important role in keeping you and your loved ones healthy, but it's important to remember that antibiotics only treat bacterial infections. Most common infections such as colds, flu, most sore throats, bronchitis, and many sinus and ear infections are caused by viruses and do not respond to antibiotic treatment. These infections can be overcome by simply treating the symptoms and letting the illness run its course. Unfortunately, antibiotics have often been overused, resulting in decreased effectiveness and an increase in antibiotic-resistant diseases. Antibiotic resistance, or the increased ability of bacteria to survive in the presence of antibiotics, has become a major public health threat that we all need to help fight. When a person takes antibiotics, they are at risk for possibly having a bad reaction to these drugs. Some side effects can be quite serious, or even life-threatening in the case of an allergic reaction or severe diarrhea. This is why it is very important to only use antibiotics when they are absolutely needed, and not for viral infections. Talk to your healthcare professional about the best treatment for your illness. If it is caused by a virus, follow his or her recommendation for treating the symptoms. Learn more about appropriate antibiotic use and how to feel better when you don't need an antibiotic by visiting CDC's Get Smart, Know When Antibiotics Work website at cdc.gov/getsmart/community.
For the most accurate health information, visit www.cdc.gov or call 1-800-CDC-INFO.
I'm probably okay to have one more drink before I drive home. I'm probably okay. I open the window to stay alert. Probably okay. I just popped some gum in my mouth.
Step out of the car, please.
I probably made a mistake.
probably okay isn't okay when it comes to drinking and driving. If you see a warning sign, stop and call a cab, a car, or a friend. Buzzed driving is drunk driving. A message brought to you by NHTSA and the Ad Council.
Hi, I'm Tom Hartman, and since you're listening to netrootsradio.com, show your progressive side and go to the donate button on the bottom of the homepage. It's progressives like you who power Netroots Radio and keep the progressive message beaming everywhere 24 hours a day. Just go to our donate button at the bottom of netrootsradio.com. Thank you for keeping progressive radio at full power.
Is Marjorie Taylor Greene qualified to serve in the United States House of Representatives? I'm Bill Newman, and this is the Civil Liberties Minute. Marjorie Taylor Greene is the newly elected representative from Georgia's 14th Congressional District. Greene believes, among the plethora of her racist conspiracy-laden beliefs, that the deadliest and most destructive wildfire in California's history in 2018 was intentionally caused by rich Jews who had a laser beamed down from outer space to cause the fire. Greene also subscribes to crazy QAnon conspiracy theories and has insisted that the massacres at Sandy Hook Elementary School in 2012 and the Parkland School in 2018 were staged events created solely to undermine the rights of gun owners. The Constitution sets forth 3, but only 3, requirements to be elected to the House of Representatives. Be 25 years or older, be a citizen of the United States for 7 years or more, and live in the same state where the congressional district is located. That's it. Nothing more, nothing less, but nothing more. So the answer to the question, does Marjorie Taylor Greene meet the few, minimum, and minimal qualifications to be elected to the United States House of Representatives, actually is yes. What to do about her is a different question for another Civil Liberties Minute. The Civil Liberties Minute is made possible by the ACLU because freedom can't protect itself.
The Democratic Party establishment is now issuing a go slow warning to the new president they backed. They instruct that while Biden should undo the worst edicts of Trump abnormality, he should not attempt the kind of big idea Rooseveltian structural changes that progressives advocate. They claim that it was Biden's moderate, incremental campaign for a return to pre-Trumpian normalcy that got him elected. If ignorance is bliss, these champions of the corporate-run status quo must be ecstatic. I was out there in the thick of last year's election, and it definitely was not establishmentarians who saved our nation from Trump, too. While party insiders insisted that Biden be the Democratic candidate, they didn't have the voter credibility or outreach to elect him. Big donors and powerful lawmakers don't go door to door, send millions of personal text messages, or volunteer to organize mass rallies. Rather than working with insurgent grassroots activists, the old guard that controls the party apparatus largely got in the way of success, arrogantly refusing to back progressive nominees and deflating the morale of volunteer activists. And while Biden's muted campaign of "I'm not Trump" was calming to moderates, it stamped out any spark of enthusiasm that most voters might have had if he had been a more robust champion of people's needs. The ones who carried Biden into the Oval Office, despite his 50-year career of political meekness, were the grassroots organizers and volunteers from unions, people of color activists, women's networks, youth groups, and so many other rebels against the corporate order that the Democratic powers now demand we preserve. This is Jim Hightower saying Biden's presidential legacy depends on his breaking with Washington insiders and aligning with insurgent progressive activists to make the party an FDR-ish party of the people again.
Need an antidote to the progressive blues? Want some good news about how grassroots folks are rebelling against the corporate powers and winning? Well, here's an easy-to-swallow pill for you, the Hightower Lowdown. Hightower's monthly newsletter will give you the lowdown, even as it lifts you up. It's 4 pages a month, jam-packed with facts you can use, actions you can take, and Jim's own Texas humor, all for only $15 a year. To become a lowdowner, go to hightowerlowdown.org.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2.
On this day in labor history, the year was 1900. That was the day the newly formed Building Contractors Council locked out 40,000 building tradesmen in Chicago. The Contractors Council was founded in opposition to the power of the Building Trades Council. Solidarity among the trades galvanized their ability to determine wages and working conditions throughout the city. Hard-won gains included the use of sympathy strikes, restriction of labor-saving machinery and apprentices, and work pace and production limits. In 1899, citywide building trades contracts expired. Backed by financiers, manufacturers, and engineers, the new council demanded the union abandon these gains and cut all ties with the Building Trades Council. The contractors cited the more than 20 walkouts at the Montgomery Ward construction site as but one example. The bosses were driven to destroy what historian Andrew Wender Cohn refers to as craft governance in the city. Incredulous, the crafts refused to recognize the Contractors Council or its demands. The contractors locked them out. They brought in 6,000 scabs to continue construction work throughout the city. Pitched battles continued daily in the streets between locked out tradesmen and scabs. Many contractors brought in cots and food to non-union workers, keeping them on job sites until completion. Labor-friendly Mayor Carter Harrison II offered to mediate but refused police protection of the scabs. The contractors built up their own private force. Then they injected an added racial dimension to the conflict. Among the non-union workers, some were black tradesmen, briefly hired as construction workers and job site guards. The lockout ended in a 1901 defeat for the building trades, whose ranks were decimated by 90%. The building trades would bounce back and were soon a formidable force in Chicago.
Thank you for accompanying us here to the Chef's Table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy Blue Moon Spirits Fridays. We always begin, whether from around the world, along the banks of the Rogue River and the Rogue River Valley of Southern Oregon on the west coast of the continental United States of America, where it is currently 30 degrees Fahrenheit, expecting a high around 45 to 46. Cloudy skies early, then partly cloudy this afternoon. Winds will be light and variable. Very small chance of precipitation. Partly cloudy skies overnight with lows in the low 30s. Winds will remain light and variable tonight into tomorrow, where we will experience sun and a few passing clouds with highs in the low 50s. Oh my! And then lows will be in the mid to low 50s over the weekend. We were expecting a bit of rain happening maybe on Tuesday, but now that has been set back for the end of next week. Though that is subject to change, there are some storms lurking just offshore. Confirmed cases of coronavirus in Jackson County in the southern part of Oregon have now risen to 7,594 with 104 deceased. That deceased number remains the same. The confirmed cases are rising once again. Pollen is rated as none right outside the window here in Rogue River proper. The air quality index for the region is good at 31 parts per million, and the daytime UV index remains at its wintertime low of 2. Barometric pressure is holding steady at 30.41 inches. Visibility is at 4 miles, and relative humidity is at 98%. Weather from around the world is brought to you by a crowd of crowdsourced weather stations that a crowd of crowdsourcers crowdsource, and these crowdsourcers crowdsource from around the world. We'll have this all cleaned up by Monday, I promise. Okay, London is 51 and partly cloudy. Paris is 53 and cloudy. Rome is 65 and sunny. What the hell? It's not supposed to be like that. Kyiv is 22 degrees and cloudy. Kabul is 40 degrees with its wintertime smoke. Hong Kong is 60 and clear. Tokyo is 46 and mostly cloudy. Sydney, Australia is 72 and mostly cloudy. They're in their summer, so you would expect them to be 72. San Francisco, California is 44 degrees and sunny, and New York is 40 degrees Fahrenheit and cloudy. And that is weather from around the world, brought to you by a crowd of crowdsourced weather stations that a crowd crowdsources, and these crowdsources crowdsource from around the world. Anonymous Reuters staff bring us this first amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. In the past year, the United Kingdom expelled 3 Chinese spies who were in the country on journalism visas, according to a report by the Telegraph newspaper. The report, which has not been independently verified by Reuters and cites a UK government source, says that 3 intelligence officers for China's Ministry of State Security purported to work for 3 different Chinese media agencies. Their true identities were uncovered by MI5, and they have since been forced to return to China, said the report, referring to the UK's domestic security services if none of you have ever seen any James Bond movies. Also on Thursday, Britain's media regulator revoked a Chinese TV license after it concluded that the Chinese Communist Party had ultimate editorial responsibility for the channel, and that has brought out a lot of rebuke from the Chinese Communist government.
Je te donne ce mon amour pour la vie entière, la promesse de me trouver à tes genoux. Aussitôt que tu m'appelles, rester toujours fidèle, c'est tout, c'est tout. Je te donne tous mes printemps, mes étés de mer, mes automnes quand les feuilles tombent partout. Si ce n'est pas une bonne affaire, je te donne tous mes hivers.
Anonymous staff at the Associated Press bring us this final amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. In his first conversation with new Secretary of State Antony Blinken, Russia's top diplomat slapped down U.S. criticism of opposition leader Alexei Navalny's jailing and of the massive arrests of protesters seeking his release. A foreign ministry statement said Sergei Lavrov gave detailed explanations about the need to respect Russia's legislation and judicial system like they have ever respected ours, in this reporter's opinion. Since Navalny was arrested on January 17th, upon returning to Russia from Germany where he was recovering from nerve agent poisoning, the United States has repeatedly called for his release. It also called for the freeing of protesters arrested in nationwide demonstrations over the past 2 weekends. More than 10,000 people were arrested in those protests after Navalny was ordered to spend 2.5 years in prison because he allegedly violated terms of a suspended sentence while in Germany. Lavrov drew Blinken's attention to the problems related to the prosecution in the U.S. of those who protested in connection with the results of the presidential elections and called for the transparency of the relevant judicial procedures. The ministry statement said, "Oh, go nuts." That's nuts. Russia has called U.S. criticism over Navalny's interference in its domestic affairs. According to State Department spokesperson Ned Price, Blinken in turn raised the issue of the opposition leader's poisoning, which Navalny blames on the Kremlin. Both diplomats did welcome the recent 5-year extension of the New START nuclear arms treaty. The Russian statement said, well, that's good. And that also brings us to the end of our broadcast period for the day and for the week. But you know we will meet up on Monday for River City Hash Mondays. So do stay tuned to Netroots Radio all day and all night and all weekend for all the breaking news as it breaks. And we'll meet up here on Monday, right here in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Robe à fleurs, sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, qu'il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte Goël. Je voudrais toujours te plaire dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je veux déjeuner par terre, comme au long de golfe clair, t'embrasser les yeux ouverts dans mon jardin d'hiver. De novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver.